Alright, I have it. The resolution, the culprit, the cause of my living room speaker buzzing. So I lied in the last video, one more on this, but I do finally have the finale. So I was going to originally pull one of the Focal 1000 IW LCR6s out of the living room wall, bring it downstairs, put it on a shorter speaker cable, hook it up to the Parasound A52 Plus, and I was expecting no buzz. But I couldn't get that darn speaker out of the wall. The foam backing had kind of cured in with the paint, and as I was pulling, if I was going to get that speaker out, I was taking some drywall with it. And I'm not interested in patching drywall, touching up paint for the services of this video. But then I had an epiphany. Something else occurred to me. I have 3 of the same Focal 1000 IW LCR6 speakers sitting in the theater room right on the other side of that wall behind the rack on shorter speaker cable runs, better speaker cable runs. So why don't I just hook up one of those speakers to the A52 Plus channel and see if it buzzes? Same effect as bringing the one, pulling the one, and bringing the one down with a whole lot less effort. So we did it, and the results are confusing and confounding, and I think a little bit astounding. Having the left Focal 1000 IW LCR6 in the theater running on a shorter speaker run of monoprice 100% OFC, good quality, thicker gauge speaker wire, it buzzed. It buzzed the same exact way the speakers in the living room buzz, which means that the speaker wire connection going through the floors, going through the walls, isn't picking up any more noise or creating the audible buzz. It's that channel. So we did a bunch of, my son and I, we did a bunch of kind of flipping around experiments, connecting things in different ways, probably where I should have started in the beginning of this whole endeavor. And suffice to say, if any of the Focal 1000 IW LCR6s are on a Parasound A52 Plus amplifier channel, they audibly buzz. If any of the Focal 1000 series IW LCR6s are on a A31 amplifier channel, they don't buzz. They do just the normal little mini bit of hiss noise floor, the same hiss that I get out of the Focal IW6s, the bookshelf in-wall version in the series, when those are on the Parasound A52 Plus channels. So I tried a couple of other things quick. I did pick up one more device from Amazon, an IFI GND ground defender, wondering maybe, okay, I'll put this on the Parasound A52 Plus, see if this little device makes a difference. And so upstairs in the living room, I was basically running one speaker on the A31, one speaker on the A52 Plus. And having this in the power cable connection of the A52 Plus didn't make any difference whatsoever in the noise. So I did some other experiments. I went ahead and took both speakers in the living room, put them on 2 channels of the A31, no buzz. I turned the gain down. I turned the gain knob all the way up. That didn't really change anything. Gain all the way up added maybe a little bit to the hiss, still completely inaudible. An interesting, gain all the way down kind of got rid of the hiss and left, I would say, the tiniest hint of buzzing. Like I had to have my ear right up planted against the grill to hear that. So I think there's just the tiniest bit of buzz and hiss, but the normal ambient hiss overdoes the very, very, very minimal amount of other noise that's coming out. But suffice to say, a Focal 1000 IW LCR6 on an A31 channel is golden. On an A52 Plus channel, not so much. So why is that? Well, I don't know. Maybe the gains or some of the internal tuning of the A52 is different than the A31. The A52 does not have an external gain knob to it. I did connect the XLR inputs on the same amp channels that I was testing, so literally just testing amplifier to speaker connection. I didn't go back and disconnect all of that. Again, I don't think the noise is coming from somewhere else, so I think what's happening is there's a negative interaction going on, a negative interaction between the A52 and the Focal 1000. And I've got 2 A52 Pluses here. I've got effectively 5 Focal 1000 IW LCR6s, and they all operate the same way. So we don't have a bad amp, we don't have a bad amp channel, we don't have bad speakers. It's just a logistic. So I think this is both an interesting discovery, because now I know where the noise is coming from. The noise is coming from that amp, not the speaker run, So what is the solution going to be? I guess the solution is get those two living room speakers off the Parasound A52 Pluses. Does this tell us anything else? Well, maybe. If I were to draw a couple conclusions from this, I would suppose that obviously there's a tuning difference between amps in the Halo line, build quality difference, whatever you want to call it, however you want to characterize it. And so I guess even in the same amp lineups, you got to be careful what you're matching with what for how these interactions turns out. Maybe a lesson for me for the future is if I'm ever going to buy speakers and or amplifiers or processors, I really want to make sure to do it in a way that I can test them out ahead of time as a system, or buy them in a way that I can put them together in my own space and give them a run with the ability to potentially swap out or exchange or return if some kind of interaction doesn't work out. So I think I have some options to get those living room speakers off of these A52 Pluses. Quite honestly, it was going to be a goal for 2023 to do that anyway. I'm not super enamored with the amp sharing. It's super efficient from a monetary perspective because I get supposedly awesome, right, Parasound amplification to the living room on amp channels that would just be dormant and unused anyway. But the reality is having to like do a hybrid zone 2 and the triggering setup of these amps to share the channels in that way, I would just like the cleanliness and the operational simplicity of running those two living room speakers basically on their own amp channels to begin with. So I could accomplish that a couple different ways. If I wanted to stay in the Parasound family, I was thinking probably an A21 Plus. So if you presume that an A21 Plus has gain knobs, has tuning, has a higher quality, quote unquote, build out than an A52, the behavior of those speakers on an A21 probably will mimic the behavior of those speakers on an A31 more than it mimics the behavior of those speakers on an A52. However, again, if I were to buy an A21 Plus, I would probably source it from my friend Dan, and we would have the ability to hook it up, I think, and test it out, and if it buzzed, then that wouldn't be a solution. Another thing that I was considering possibly was actually maybe selling the STR preamplifier and moving the living room over to maybe an Anthem STR integrated amplifier. I'd be using Anthem amps with those Focal speakers, which I have read people find maybe not to be the best match. The research that I did ahead of time suggested to me that these Parasound Halos were a better match to the Focal performance and sound maybe than Anthem amps would be. But it's something that I can try out nonetheless, and if the noise floor is clean and there's no buzz and all of that, ARC will take care of the rest. I think it will work out just fine, and I don't think I will be disappointed in the experience. I could also look at some other things. Apple on Audio Class D is kind of on my list of something that I'd like to experiment with, or the Buckeye amps or something along those lines. But I guess my ultimate solution here doesn't boil down to speaker wire. It doesn't boil down to speaker wire runs. It's these amps. So I'm going to be very interested to chat with Dan about it. Maybe even have him come over and redo some of these experiments. Yeah, I would not have expected this. This is not the outcome or the final conclusion, the final source conclusion that I would have thought of as the reason for that speaker buzzing. And again, I don't think that it's a overall power ground noise concern in the system, because why does only the IW-LCR6 buzz on an A52 but an IW6 does not buzz? I need to look at some of the specs, maybe something to check out. Maybe they have different sensitivities. It's the tweeter that buzzes, and actually the tweeter between those two models of in-walls is supposed to be the same. The main difference is the woofer combo, and one's a two-way versus a three-way. But it's the tweeter in the speaker that's actually buzzing. It's just wild. I can't really explain that. It's essentially the same electronics. Maybe though, who knows? The speaker is tuned differently. The internal connections of the crossovers, and the fact that one's a two-way and one's a three-way. Maybe that crossover network is interacting with the A52. I guess it could be anything inside either one of those components, or something inside of both of them that's not the same between the two models of speakers on those amp channels. So I'm confused, I'm relieved, I'm kind of frustrated. I got some thinking to do about what's going to happen next here. But ultimately, I still think I like the idea of getting the equipment serving the living room moved up to the living room. I think that makes sense for other integration reasons, even if it doesn't necessarily resolve the buzzing issue, although it might, because again, I would be taking a different amplifier upstairs. I would not be taking the A52 pluses up. I would get the SDR integrated, I would do an A21 plus, I would do something else, and I would be resolving the problem nonetheless, but again, it wouldn't be because of a different, shorter, different gauge, better shielded speaker connection. It would be by virtue of, I guess, just changing out the amplifier. So let me know what you think. Sound off in the comments. Have you ever connected a speaker to an amp and had a negative interaction like this, that another speaker on the same amp or another amp on the same speaker just behaved kind of totally differently outside of any other seeming integration elements of your system or your power supply quality, ground loops and grounding issues? Sound off in the comments, share your story. I'm going to go back and look through the comments on some of the other videos on this, because I know folks have mentioned different elements of different interactions like this. And if you want to see kind of my overall thoughts or a deeper dive on what I'm planning to do for the whole living room zone, or what I would like to do for the whole living room audio and video zone, hopefully in 2023, take a look at that video. The link will be popping up here in a second. Otherwise, please do all the regular YouTube stuff. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Thanks so much for watching. Look down in the description below for ways to support the channel. I'm going to have to buy an A21 Plus or something else maybe. I appreciate your support. And yeah, this has been an interesting journey of experimentation and now some discovery, some resolution. So thanks so much for watching. Come on back for more home theater discussion and fun.